Boisei, let's do it. Hilchos Zimun. Hilchos Zimun? What are you going to say about Hilchos Zimun? Isn't it, 1, 2 halachos and you're done? Oh, there's more. You'll see there's more than you know about. Coming up. Hilchos Zimun. Now, actually, there's a parak in Brachos called Shosha Sha'achlu. And in fact, there's, you open up the Shulchan Aruch, or Chaim, and you go Kuf Tzadi Beis through Reish, all Hilchos Zimun. There's so much to talk about. All right, you'll find out a little bit of it. It's actually a bigger sugya than you know. So let's do it. There's a mitzvah, not just a mitzvah, this is a chiyuv to make a zimun before you bench. The Gemara, it's a Mishnah in Brachos, Memhei Aleph, says there is a chiyuv to zimun. So it's not just a nice idea. It's not just a good action, a positive thing. It's a chiyuv. You have a chiyuv to shake your lulav and asuk. You have a chiyuv to make a zimun. We'll see if it's exactly the same level chiyuv. We're going to find out. Now the Gemara asks, what's the source of this chiyuv? What's the source of the chiyuv of making a zimun? So Rav Asi says it comes from a pasuk, Tehillim Lamadal Dalid, Gadol Hashem iti Remosh Me'ach Tov. Yeah, that's the source of praising Hashem before we start benching together, making the Shem Hashem great. Rav Avo, what does he say the source is? Ki Shem Hashem Ekra Havu Goydel Elokeinu. So that's the source of the chiyuv of zimun. Now the Ravid, the Torah, the Shvus Yaakov, the Chazanish, the Stipler, they all say the chiyuv of zimun is deraisa. It's a deraisa take a chiyuv. Whereas the Rambam, the Sefer Chasidim, the Chai Adam, the Aruch HaShulchan, and we'll see that the Mishnah Berurah goes this way, say that the chiyuv of zimun is a chiyuv Midrabanan. It's not a chiyuv deraisa. It's only a chiyuv midrabanan. Listen, chiyuv midrabanan means you got to do it too. But it's just always good to know whether we're dealing with the chiyuv deraisa or chiyuv derabanan. They say we're dealing with the chiyuv derabanan. Now we have a little bit of a sugya question. Guys, didn't you pay attention to the Gemara and Brachos I just quoted? The Gemara quotes psukim to say that that's the source of making a zimun. If it's psukim that are the source of making a zimun, the chayra, it's a chiyuv deraisa. Psukim don't tell you chiyuv derabanan. Psukim tell you what is a chiyuv deraisa. What's going on here? So I think maybe we could explain all the shitas, and this is actually where we're going to go, that it's a derabanan, like this. The first of the sources, Rav Asi's source, was Tehillim. We have a general rule that we don't learn halachos from what we call Divrei Kabbalah, Nach. So Tehillim is part of Nach. And we don't learn halachos from Nach. Now, it's true that Rav Avo's source was from Chamishe Chomshei Torah, which was a valid source to learn from. However, from the fact that Rav Asi makes a suggestion that the source is from Tehillim, that proves that it must just be what we call a smachta. It must not be the real source. It's just something to show, hint to it in the Torah, but really it's the Rabbanan. Because if they held it was the Deraisa, there would be no tzad for Rav Asi to quote a pasuk in Tehillim. It would have to be only the Chamisha Chomshei Torah pasuk. If you understood that sugya point, great. If not, don't worry, it's not going to ruin anything else. Okay, fine. So the Maisa, the poskim go on, and the Mishnah Berurah, with I guess the final word, is going to say that, and the Aruch HaShulchan as well, that it is a mitzvah derabanan to make a zimun. Now, is there really nafkamina? Who cares whether it's deraisa or derabanan? What's nafkamina? Either way, you got to do it, and if you got to do it, what's nafkamina? So, like this. The nafkamina, the most prominent nafkamina is, could a 13-year-old boy lead a zimun? Could the 13-year-old bar mitzvah boy lead the zimun? What does that have to do with anything? Really, you only have godless. You really only are luckily a gadol when you have the physical signs of maturity, namely shtei saris. Now, when a boy reaches the age of 13, we assume that he has shtei saris based on the chazaka de Rava. There's something called the chazaka de Rava that we are going to assume that every 13-year-old boy qualifies as an adult, but it's not proven. We only rely on the chazaka de Rava on chiyuvei derabanan. On mitzvahs derabanan, we'll rely on him. But when it comes to a mitzvah deraisa, we cannot rely on him. So if you hold that the chiyuv of zimun's deraisa, so you will not allow a bar mitzvah boy, you wait until he's 15, 16, the big strong guy, with some facial hair. Okay, now you're going to allow him to lead the benching. But a 13-year-old boy, no way. And kachaya, the stipler, the chazon ish, they were makbid. They would never give the bar mitzvah boy to lead the zimun. No way. He can actually daven, he can lead mincha. But he can't lead the zimun. However, if you hold that it's a mitzvah derabanan, as the Shulchan Aruch Mishnah Berurah paskin, then any 13-year-old boy would be allowed to lead the zimun, unless you actually knew for a fact that they didn't have shtei saris. If you knew for a fact, however that would be, that they didn't have shtei saris, then they actually wouldn't be allowed to lead, even according to the Mishnah Berurah, but you're not chayav to check, and therefore you're allowed to rely on the chazaka de Rava. There may be other nafkaminas, perhaps in situations as sfeikas, but that's not so simple. Okay. Who can be counted as one of the 3 people of the zimun? Or one of the 10, when you have a minion type zimun? So who counts? The Mechaber says, a cotton that reaches the age of pu'utais counts. Oh, pu'utais, what's that? Let's just hear what the Ramah says. The Ramah says, no, it's cotton pu'utais. You need to be 13. 13 is 13, you have to be a gadol. Now the Mishnah Berurah goes and explains the Mechaber, what's this age of pu'utais? It's 9 or 10. And some say that if you're a sharp kid, even from the age of 6. I'll tell you, I once, with my oldest, he was 11 or so, we ate shalshudis at my neighbor, Uriel ben Shemol, who's a Sephardi, and he said, okay, by the end of davening, by the end of the shalshudis, he's like, okay, let's bench for the zimun. And I said, huh? Binyamin's not bar mitzvah. And he says, no, us Sephardim, he's 11 years old, we could have a zimun. I said, you know what? You lead the zimun, we'll answer. It's your house, your minhag, you lead the zimun, and we'll answer. And now I see that we can see that it's actually a straight up din mechaber, that you don't need to be 13 to be part of the zimun. You count even as a 9 or 10-year-old, or maybe even as a 6-year-old who is sharp. So yes, we could have such a zimun. Now, fine. Now, once again, the Mishnah Berurah points out that us Ashkenazim, we need 13 like the Ramah. And it used to be the one who led the zimun, he would actually be moitzi everyone with benching, not just have that starting couple of lines. Now, and for whatever reason, the minhag has changed and developed that we only lead the couple of lines, but we don't actually be moitzi everyone in the whole benching. I'm just going to throw in there that lichatchila, the best thing is for the one who leads the benching to say it out loud until the end of the first bracha. It's a machlokes. The Mishnah Berurah says it is the minhag. The Aruch HaShulchan says it's not the minhag. L'mais, it's better to do it. Most people don't do it, so I'm not having kashas because the L'mais says the Aruch HaShulchan says the minhag is not for the one leading the benching to say it out loud until azanas akol. However, L'mais the Mishnah Berurah says it is the minhag, so therefore l'chayr it's best to do. Okay, so once again they used to be mitzi everybody with the benching. Now, if they were mitzi everybody with the benching, is benching derabanan deraisa? Benching is deraisa. So Zak the Mishnah Berurah, the 13-year-old boy, everybody agrees, even the Ramah agrees against the it's not just the Chazon Ish and the stipler. Even us who rely on the Chazaka of the Rava only to lead the benching, but we wouldn't rely on the Chazaka of the Rava to be mitzi somebody in benching. Once again, sugya point, you got it, great. If not, don't worry. Weiter. Let's ask some interesting questions. Do women make a all-women zimun? You have 3 women who are eating together. Do they make a zimun? No, we're not reform. Okay, and what type of question? What do you think? Some reform modax thing? Women make zimun? Come on. We're not reform here. We're listening to a shiur. What are you asking such trivial questions? Well, guess what, guys? There is a Shulchan Aruch that says it is a rishus that if women want to make a zimun, they could. Seemingly, if they don't want to make a zimun, they don't have to. Zak the Gra, and the Gra was pretty from. He was a pretty Haredi fellow, the Gra. Zak the Gra, women are chayiv in making a zimun. You have 3 women who eat together. They have a chiyuv, just like men have a chiyuv in making the zimun. No getting out of it. Zak the Gra, 3 women who eat together have a chiyuv of making a zimun. Really? That's interesting. Now, who's the pashtus? The Gra or the Shulchan Aruch? So actually, the Gra is more pashut. If you tell me there's no chiyuv for women, fine, I can understand that. Happens to me, nobody says that. If you're going to tell me like the Gra, that they have an absolute chiyuv just like men, probably learned from the same source, I understand it. Hey, at the end of the day, is this a mitzvah to say Shivzvan Grama? No! Well, if you have a mitzvah which isn't bound by time, women are chayiv. Is this a mitzvah? Yeah. Is it bound by time? No. So use the rules, women are chayiv. That should be how it works. That's a simple cheshbon. You don't have to be a genius to work it out. The Gemara makes perfect sense. What in the world is the Shulchan Aruch saying that it's a rishus? What's the logical basis for saying it's a rishus? Why would it be rishus? It's either a chiyuv or it's not a chiyuv. What's going on? So the Mishnah Berurah, in explaining the Shulchan Aruch, because once again we have to give some rationale, so the Mishnah Berurah explains that since it wasn't so regular for women to be baki in Birchas Hamazon and making these and leading the zimun, women didn't know this stuff very well. So, and once again, we're working within the Manda Amr that it's D'Rabbanan. So when the Chachamim were misakin that men should have a zimun, and then they were misakin also that women should have a zimun, they didn't give it in the level of a chiyuv, rather they give it in the level of rishus. Why? Because if they didn't know, they're not going to make a chiyuv on women to lead a zimun when the women didn't really know how to bench so well. So if they didn't even know how to bench so well, so we're not going to make them make a zimun because we can't be mechayev them on something that they're incapable of. So let me ask you an interesting question. Nowadays, the women that are within the fold from women, do they know how to bench? Yeah. They learn a lot. Do they go to Beis Yaakov? Yeah. So they know stuff. So really, the whole reason to say that women, it should be a rishus, supposed to a chiyuv, doesn't apply today. Does that mean that nowadays it should be a chiyuv, even according to the Shulchan Aruch? No. Because it's not how the takanas work. Since at the time of the takana, it was the Chacham were only misakin it as a rishus, and they weren't misakin it as a chiyuv. Therefore, even though nowadays women know stuff, and even though nowadays women know how to bench, they could lead a zimun if they were told to. L'maisa, if it was only given as a rishus, it remains a rishus. But one thing that you do see is that there's definitely, seemingly the sugya would point to, it would be the right thing for women to have a zimun. That's definitely the way the sugya points. Now, the question is, what's going on? Because it seems like women, the minhag has become that women don't have a zimun. So what's going on? So I was just thinking maybe, I haven't studied this, but as the Mishnah Berurah explained, that women don't know how to do this, right? And the Mishnah Berurah didn't even say, a couple hundred years ago, women didn't know this. The Mishnah Berurah, which was written 100 years ago, said women don't know how to do this, right? So it's probably 100 years ago, women didn't know how to do this. It was very often they didn't know how to do this. So why did the minhag become that women don't bench with a zimun? Well, one simple reason is because they don't know what they're doing, so they don't bench with a zimun, as the Mishnah Berurah said. I don't have to make up a new answer. It's pretty much there. So the question is, should women bench with a zimun nowadays? The sugya seems to say yes. What do I say? So I'll tell you like this. On one hand, the basic sugya says women should bench with a zimun. There is another concern, and I'll say it like this. Why do you want to bench with a zimun? If it's women who are medaktik ba'alocha, if it's women that run after mitzvahs, and why do you want to bench with a zimun? Because it's a mitzvah. If you tell me it's a mitzvah, I'll do it. I say, hey, go for it. Bench with a zimun and no men around. You guys want to do it? bench with the Zimun. Don't put it on your status to show off your feminism and women's rights. If you're doing it, if it's the basis of why you want to bench with the Zimun, it's coming from feminism and women's rights, and that's really what's driving your decision to wanting to make a Zimun, stay far away. That's treif shebetreif, and it leads to just horrible stuff. So where is it coming from? Coming from medaktik mitzvahs? Coming after wanting to do a mitzvah? Bench with a Zimun. If it's coming from feminism, we could do it also, women's rights. Stay far away. You start off with that. Before you know it, she's making kiddush, she's making Havdalah, and she's laying the Megillah. Before you know it, she's laying the Sefer Torah, she's the Chazanit, and it's all over. So let's not go down that path. But once again, if it's coming from a situation, a place of being medaktik mitzvahs, gesundheit hate, go for it. Okay, another halacha that I think people do not know. And this is a really, really important halacha. And I don't know why people don't know it. It's a first in the Shulchan Aruch. You ready? If women are eating with men, with 3 men, there's 3 men and 2 women who are eating, brothers, sisters, whatever it is. And there's a chiyav zimun, just like there's a chiyav zimun for men. I'm going to say soon that, when there's a chiyav zimun, you can't just leave the table without a zimun. And there's a chiyav zimun, you need a zimun. Women have that same chiyav. The women are going to be mechayiv in the zimun. The women have to answer. I think a lot of women don't bother answering, Yishem, Hashem. They don't even bother answering. They don't know that they're chayiv in it. Women are chayiv in a zimun, they have to answer. And by the way, do my machrim as well. Maybe not at the table, that's what the debate. Don't, not in everybody's face. But yeah, do my machrim and do the zimun. People do not know this. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein asks, why are people not makbid on this? So he suggests, maybe during the week, it's not so common that women aren't a matzif, that they're eating together with 3 men, and they sat down together and ate together. It's just not the matzif. It just doesn't happen much during the week. So that's why during the week, women do not participate in a men's zimun. And on Shabbos, why don't women participate in the zimun? Because the men don't wait for them. Rav Moshe Feinstein just threw the men under the bus. And he said, why? Because it's all the men's fault. The men should be waiting for the women for the zimun, and they don't wait, and it's all their fault, and they should wait, and women should be part of the zimun. So that's what Rav Moshe Feinstein says. But he's not the only one to throw people under the bus. Comes along Rav Vosner. And Rav Vosner was the Paisik Adar. Now Rav Vosner also was Hasidish. He wasn't a Rebbe, but he was Hasidish. He had Hasidish yeshiva. He wore a shtreimel. He was a Chassid, Rav Vosner. But he was the Paisik Adar for everyone. So Rav Vosner says, the Hasidim, they leave their meal and they go to the Tish. And they bench at the end of the Tish. They bench together with the Rebbe. Rav Vosner says, that's not right. How could they do that? The women are chayiv in zimun. How could they leave the women behind and leave them when they're chayiv in the zimun? The women are not going to be able to bench with the zimun. That's wrong. Women are chayiv in the zimun. How can you do that? He suggests as maybe a limit schos, maybe they're relying on the Bach. What does the Bach say? The Bach says is a little bit lamdish. The chiv of zimun is only chal at the end of the meal. And therefore, if they left before the end of the meal, the chiyuv for zimun has not fallen yet, has not taken effect, has not been chal. And since the chiyuv has not been chal, they haven't left the women without their chiyuv because there was no chiyuv. In simple terms, there's no problem if you leave before the end of the meal because it's only by the end of the meal when you need a zimun, and they left before getting to the end of the meal, so there was no chiyuv zimun in that house. But the problem is, there happens to be the Magen Avram passes like the Bach, but the Mishnah Berurah says we don't pass like the Bach, and the Mishnah Berurah says Rav Achronim don't go like the Bach. The Mishnah Berurah very often will pass like a Magen Avram, but over here Rav Achronim are against the Magen Avram, so he doesn't go with the Bach. So Tzarchi Gadol, Rav Vosner says Tzarchi Gadol on this minhag. Another point: we don't make a zimun when it's a combination of men and women. Meaning, I was just talking about before when you have 3 men and you added on women as well. Now they're part of the Zimun. But you don't make a Zimun 2 men and 1 woman. You don't do that. As the Lashon of the Mishnah Berurah says, She'ein chavrasam na. It's not nice. Seems like it's not modest. It's not sneeze, I guess is what it means. And the Mishnah Berurah says even a woman and her 2 sons don't make a Zimun. This is a little bit hard to understand because there's nothing lack of sneeze if a woman and her 2 sons would make a Zimun. But I think it's like somewhat of a loy plug that we're not gonna start deciding each case whether it is modest or not modest, sneeze or not sneeze, and therefore, as a general rule, we do not create a group by men and women together, even if it is a mother and her 2 sons. Fine. The Gemara says that Amar's Gomer does not join a Zimun. The Shulchan Aruch says nowadays we could allow Amar's Gomer to join because we're not looking to push him away. If we tell him you can't be part of the Zimun, they'll push him away. L'maisa, anybody that is enough that he knows that there's a constant of the Zimun, let him join the Zimun. If the guy never heard of the Zimun, so you don't need to go dafka choose this thing to go bring him in. And also a Machal Shabbos, same type of idea, that don't pick this as the thing to bring him in to join in the Zimun, but if he knows about the Zimun and he wants to join, don't push him away, let him join. Okay, so what exactly do you need to eat to be part of the Zimun? So we're going to talk about a 3-person Zimun and a 10-person Zimun. For a 3-person Zimun, you need 2 out of the 3 people need to eat bread. Challah, pas. You need bread. 2 out of the 3 need to eat bread. And yes, if you ate pizza, enough pizza that you're going to bench, meaning also if you ate enough cake that you have to bench. Whatever it is you ate that you need to bench, 2 out of 3. And when it comes to a minyan of 10 for a Zimun, so they need 7 out of 10 to need to bench, to have eaten bread. And if you have 7 out of 10, you can even start 3 others we'll discuss in a second. Now, what's Pshat in 7? If it's a Vardan Roiv, so okay, you should have 6 people that ate. But why do you need 7 people that ate? Zakter Shlomo Zalman, I don't know. And what do I say? Well, if Shlomo Zalman says, I don't know, then I say, I don't know. Okay, I don't know why 7, but that's Azoy State. Okay, beautiful. So, those 2 out of 3, 7 out of 10 need bread. A lot of people, by the way, don't know 7 out of 10, so it's good. You should know. You'll sound stark. It's geschmack. Now, what about that third guy, or what about the 3 out of 10 that didn't eat bread? What about them? So, best is if they ate mazonos. But if they didn't eat mazonos, they ate vegetables, that's also good. And even if they didn't have vegetables, if they just had a drink, that is good enough. Now, what type of drink counts? So, Zat the Magan Avram Chayodam, the Graz, any drink, even water. So, this is pretty easy. You have 7 people that had a Suda. You just chop in 3 people. They could drink a little, according to the Graz, Chayodam, Magan Avram, a cup of water. Beautiful. And they could join the benching. Now, the Shulchan Aruch and Mishnah Berurah, they work with and the Aruch HaShulchan, they say that anything except the water. So you don't need a major. A cup of Coke is good enough. Or as the Aruch HaShulchan says, lemonade or seltzer is good enough. I saw a pasuk say seltzer is not good enough, but the Aruch HaShulchan says seltzer is good enough, unless it means something else. But I assume it means seltzer means seltzer. So, yeah, it seems like we're going to go with anything except water. Why? Because water is in a vart in a tiny. Water is just this. I don't dehydrate, so I'm not thirsty. So I guess they want something a little bit more chashuv. Once again, it's not a big deal. It's pretty easy to get people if that's all the requirement is. Now, but at the end of the day, once again, it's better if there's mazonos or at least a vegetable. Now, let's talk about which type of people could be mitzdarf to make a zimun. Let's say you had 2 guys eating fleishiks and 1 guy eating milchiks. Could they be mitzdarf to a zimun? So, answer, yes, they could. Why? It's true that the 2 fleishiks guys can't eat from the milchik guy, but the milchik guy can eat from the fleishik guy, and therefore they could have a zimun. Now, the Mishnah Berurah points out it's best if the milchik guy is the one to make the zimun, because the milchik guy could then go and eat from the fleishiks, but the fleishiks guys can't eat from the milchiks. So therefore, it's better if the milchik guy is the one to lead the zimun. Fine. But just a similar type thing. Let's say two guys are eating pas palter, and one guy is makbid that he only has pas Yisrael. It's the same thing that you can have a zimun, but the pas palter eater should be the one to make the zimun. Let's say you have one guy eating fleishiks and the other guy is eating hard cheese. And once again, if they're both eating also cookies, so they could join together because they're both eating cookies. But let's say this guy's only eating a bread hard cheese sandwich, and this guy's only eating a shawarma, right? So could they have a zimun together? Answer, no. No, there's no tzirf. There's no connection between the two. They're incompatible, and therefore there's no zimun. Guys, I got something geschmack. This is an Eretz Yisrael Haredi one. You ready? I don't hold a your hechsher. You don't hold a my hechsher. This guy's eating Landau chicken, and this guy's eating Eda Haredi's chicken. The Landau guys think listen, your chicken's nevela. It's nevela. I can't eat that. And the Eda Haredi's is like, you're sheikhim, the sheikh by you guys, a bunch of apikarsim, and he doesn't eat from him, and this guy doesn't eat from that guy doesn't eat from this guy. By the way, I eat from both of them without any issues. But these guys, if you know the type of guys I'm talking about, if you ever met them, you know. So they don't hold of each other's hachsherim, no zimun, they can't eat together, they're uncompatible. And if you're uncompatible, it's not going to work. Okay. Fine. Now, something very interesting the Mishnah Berurah says that you actually should recruit a third person. The Shulchan Aruch really says that, I should say. So if you have two people that are eating, there's an inyan of dragging a third person to you in order to be able to have a zimun. And the Mishnah Berurah points out, you don't have to go into the street. Like they're looking for a tenth of the million, center, asiri. No, you don't have to go like that and say, shlishi. You don't have to do that. But if there's somebody in your house, you should try to drag them along to make a zimun. Now, I don't think many people do this, but it's the din Shulchan Aruch, it's the din Mishnah Berurah. Two people you eat together, you have a mitzi, and there's another person in the house, tell them, come along, come, have a cookie, and we'll have a zimun. And there's a mitzvah to do such. Obviously, you can't force the guy, but there is such a inyan. Fine. Now, when could you bring the third guy in? At what point? So as long as the first two guys didn't say, let's bench, as long as the first two guys didn't have my mechronim, and by the way, same thing by 10, as long as the first 7 guys didn't say, let's bench, the first 7 guys didn't do my mechronim, and they still have room to eat a little bit more, which is generally the case, then you could have the third guy come and join. Once again, the third guy should have a kazayas of his food, or at least a revius, I guess, of the drink, and then he could join. Okay, now, once you're chayiv in zimun, you can't leave without a zimun. There's no, I want to go. I don't care if you want to go. There's no leaving. You can't leave once you're chayiv in a zimun, which is pretty interesting. Now, if you have 3 people, so actually before I do that, so if you have up to 5 people, 3 to 5 people, you can't leave without the zimun. If you have 6 to 9 people, you could get together the 3 of them and say, let's make a zimun now. And, they'll make another zimun later. As long as you leave 3 people for their zimun. Once you have 10 people, you can't even make a zimun of 3, because a 10-person zimun is a more chashuv a minyan, a more chashuv a zimun. You say Elokeinu, the Shem Hashem, and therefore it makes it more chashuv. So therefore, you're not allowed to make a zimun of 3. So from when you have up to 19 people, you can't leave without the zimun. From 20 and above, you're allowed to take off 10 of those people as long as you leave 10 people left, and you could make a zimun. Okay, now if there is 3 people, and let's say 2 want to go, so the 2 could force the one that wants to stay to answer to the zimun. Now, what's the procedure? So according to Sfardim, he just answers Yishem Hashem Varach, he does answers for the zimun, and he could eat right away. According to Ashkenazim, the Ramah, he should wait until after they finish the bracha Hazanas HaKol, and then the first guy who joined in the zimun, he could continue eating without a problem. Now, Let's say one guy wants to go. He can't force the two people to answer Zimun. But Lamaisa, it's Midas Typhus for those two people to let him start the Zimun and answer and leave. Now, what if you want to go and you're part of the minority, but you can't start a Zimun like this? This is the type of situation, you're at a simcha, you're at a bris, and there's somebody speaking. You can't say, "Excuse me, stop speaking, I want to lead the crowd with the Zimun." That's not respectful. So how do you get out of there? Is there a way? So one possibility is the Bach that we quoted. Remember the Bach said there's only a chiyuv when you end the Suda. Over here, they're not at the end of the Suda. They're in the middle of the Suda. So there's no chiyuv yet, and therefore I could leave. And the Mogan Avram passes that way. But once again, we said the Mishnah Berurah doesn't pass in that way. And by the way, even the Bach, let's say everybody finished eating, but that grandfather, that Rav, is darshaning, probably in Yiddish, and he's going on and on and on, and everybody finished eating already, everybody's just waiting for this to end. You definitely can't bench there. Even according to the Bach, you can't bench, because everybody finished eating, it's just that and therefore the key is for sure chal already. It's just that they didn't bench yet. But forget it, even if everybody's still fressing away, the Mishnah Berurah Paskins, we don't go like Roy Vachronim against the Bach, and therefore that's not a good enough reason to bench. So, fine. So what's pshat? So, what can we do? So the Mishnah Berurah slips in a little line over there, and he says, if it's b'malkei malinus or by hefsid man, you could leave. Now, I don't know if every little, reason you want to get out of there is alinus, and every little reason you want to get out of there is hefsid man. It sounds like it has to be a pretty significant need to get out of here. Now, Ramosha has a couple of eitzes to allow you to get out of there. First of all, he says, you know what? Don't wash. You think you have to leave early? Just don't wash, and you won't get stuck in the problem. Next eitzah, he says you should say beferish, I don't want to be mitzdaref. And if you say beferish, I don't want to be mitzdaref, therefore you're not mitzdaref with everyone, and therefore you have no chiyuv of zimun chal upon you, and therefore you can bench early. Now this is quite a chiddush. Why is this quite a chiddush? Because actions speak louder than words. It's very nice that you said before you washed, I'm not being mitzdaref with these guys. But then you sit down with a bunch of guys, you're schmoozing, you're saying divrei Torah, could you pass the hummus? Oh, this is great. Pass me the lox and cream cheese. Oh, good. You guys tasted this bagel? Geschmack. Yeah, you heard the joke? Yeah. You're mitzdaref! Look, you're mitzdaref. Great shkoich, you said I don't want to be mitzdaref. But you are mitzdaref. Actions speak louder than words. So that's a big chiddush. The Meister Moshe has two rayas to defend himself in this chiddush. Raya number one is that there is a concept that we see in the Gemara that they don't make a zimun in Beis Akam. In the house of Goy, let's say in the inn or whatever, the Jews wouldn't make a zimun. Why not? Because the Goy would get suspicious. It looks wrong. It looks weird. It looks like a problem. What are they? They're talking loud in Hebrew. What's going on here? So therefore, they wouldn't make a zimun in the Beis Akam. But practically, now, and by the way, the Shulchan Aruch Mishnah Berurah says nowadays we do. That's not Negea anymore. But Bisman Gemara was Negea. The Mishnah Berurah, Moshe asked, what's the mechanics behind it? How could they get away with not making a zimun if there's a chiyuv zimun? Once again, you could have answered it was a sakana, but it seems that Moshe is learning it wasn't mamish a sakana. So how do you get away with it? So he explains they weren't kaveya themselves to be mitzdaref together. So they were eating with kavanah not to be mitzdaref, and you see it works when you have kavanah not to be mitzdaref. Second ray of Moshe. Let's say you have different tables, different people sitting at different tables, different groups in a larger room. Are they mitzdaref or are they not mitzdaref? Well, it depends on kavanah, the poskim say. For example, let's say you're at a bar mitzvah, and there's multiple tables at the bar mitzvah. You want to be part of everything. You want to be together with everyone. It's just that, we can't fit everyone on the same table. Understand? Okay, you can't fit everyone on the same table. Fine. But you really want to be part of everything. You're mitzdaref. You could join in a zimun from the people around you. However, if you're in a restaurant and each group is defined and each group is different and I don't really have anything to do with those people. I don't know them. I don't plan on ever talking to them. Then you're not mitzdarf. So you see, kavana dictates whether or not you're mitzdarf. Now, one could definitely argue on some of these things, but that is the basic idea. Fine. Now, I have a question. Could you create a stam das? Can I say, for now on, every bris that I go to, I have kavana not to be mitzdarf? So it's interesting, because from the proof, it sounds like by the base of Yichum, they didn't have kavana every single time. That was the general das, and they were able to rely on it. However, if you read the Ramosha, he says you should say it beferish. You should say it explicitly that you have in mind not to be mitzdarf. So I don't really know how to go with this, because once again, his raya seems to imply that you could create a stam das. However, the actual wording of Ramosha says you should say it beferish. So tzarech in. Okay, next. Now, something that you should know. Oh, by the way, one more thing, actually. The Shevet Kasi explains this is actually what you rely on to go to the Tish. The Hasidim will rely on this to go to the Tish. There's kavana that you don't want to be mitzdarf. Now, this is a little bit wild. Every Shabbos, you're not being mitzdarf to have a Suda with your wife and daughters. It's a little bit wild. But yeah, that's how the Shevet Kasi explains the minhag of going to the Tish. There's kavana of not being mitzdarf. Okay. Now, one thing to note, which I only chapped recently, I knew this from Moshe for a very long time, but I only chapped when I was relearning the sugya, is if you have that das, let's say you said beferish, I'm not going to be mitzdarf here. I don't want to be a chayiv and zimun. I'm not going to be mitzdarf. And then what happens is you go to the Suda, and oh my gosh, there's really not a lot of people here. I feel bad leaving. I want to stay. Or, whoa, they mean business. The Baal simply gets up, does a 5-minute thing. Chitak, you see he's moving. Let's get it. People have to get the Seder. We have to make this quick. All right, I'll stay. So, you actually cannot answer in the Zimun, because you had kavanah not to be mitzdarf. How are you going to answer in the Zimun that you have no sheikhs to? You had no kavanah to be mitzdarf with them. You have to eat after you change your mind that you want to be mitzdarf to them. Then you have to eat some more, and only then you can be part of the Zimun. And it makes perfect sense, but if you never thought about it, you never thought about it. Okay. I heard from Reb Zev Smith. It's an interesting eitzah for the Tish goers. He quoted the Piskei Tshuva, and he said you can make a zimun. The men can make the zimun, and then the women will bench. The men will make the zimun and not bench, and then the women will bench, and that will work. Sounds kind of strange to me, but okay, that's what I heard. Now, fine. Another eitzah is just making sure you don't start the meal together with everyone else. By a wedding, this is pretty easy. You don't go and wash and sit down with everyone at the first, the beginning of the meal. Because once again, it's only if you started the meal or ended the meal with people. If you ate the middle of the meal with people, then you're not mitzdarf. So don't, the second after the chuppah, you don't run and eat at the same time as everybody together. If you don't do that, then you're not mitzdarf to them. Or, so this way of bris, this is more complicated. Right after the bris, that's when everybody washes. When else are you going to wash? When else are you going to start eating? So it's not always as practical. Another eitzah, which is a little bit similar, is you don't start eating in the same place. Meaning, you're going to sit down at the main table. But you take a little bread, you sit on a chair in your own corner, you eat your first kazayas of bread in a chair in your own corner, and then you go join everybody. That way you didn't start with everyone. If you didn't start with anybody, you're not going to start with them, and you can leave when you please. Fine. Now, Lamaisa, even if you didn't have any of these eitzahs, right, you started like normal and you want to leave. Is there any tzat? I gotta get the Seder. I can't hear this guy's Joshes anymore. And now the other Zayd is gonna speak, and then the other. How many Zaydas does this baby have? You know what I mean? You gotta get out of here. You gotta get the Seder. Could you leave? So the Maisa, the Aruch HaShulchan and Dayan Fisher say that you can make a zimun of 3 and not wait for the zimun of 10 if you need to get to a mitzvah. For example, you have to get to Seder, you could do it, just go to the people around you, make a Zimun of 3, and go. The Sefer Yosef Aimitz says you can even leave without a Zimun altogether. If you need to go, you need to go, and you could just leave. That doesn't seem to be the completely accepted opinion, amongst the general poskim, but I think people in Mesa do rely on this. People feel they have to leave, but you should know in halach it's not so simple. Thank you for listening. We should all have good reasons to join together and be together as a chabura, to praise Hashem together, and we should only have good news. Thank you for listening.